This week's video is all about getting ready to pull our two Detroit diesel 12V71s. First we removed the dry stack exhaust, heavy steel pipe that took some figuring. Then we opened up the original hatches, cutting through the galley floor and nearly an inch of filler on the roof. Finally I started building a gantry strong enough to lift a 5,000-pound Detroit. It's the kind of satisfying start that makes a big job feel possible. And if you've ever torn into a project like this, you know exactly what I mean. Let's get to it. So we'd arrived at Stevson and I was pretty excited to get going on this, and we had a few things we had to do first. So first of all, exhaust, we had to figure out what we were going to do there. We had to get that all out and designed. Secondly, we had to open up all the hatches in the boat to make sure we have room to get everything out, because it's got to get from the bowels of the boat to outside. And lastly, I had to build gantries because the ports that we have, or the openings that we have, are only on the starboard side. So I've got to get that big heavy Detroit from the port of the engine, or the engine room, to the starboard side of the engine room. And for you, those of you who don't know, that's about 5,000 pounds worth of engine that I've got to shift across the engine room. So got to build some fairly heavy duty gantries to get that slid across, and then we can get some stuff out of the engine room. So I'm starting to remove all of the original monitoring wiring. So I've removed the two red panels that were here and here. That was all the mechanical gauges. I will be putting some back in again, just not ones that are crap. So got the old starter and stop solenoid up here. These are the cinders for the gauges up top. That's all coming out. We're doing something different for that, which should be a lot nicer. And we've got the other start stop here. So you can see this engine I haven't quite started disassembling yet. But this one, I've got all the exhaust pipes off in the back. I've got the left-hand side exhaust manifold off. I'll have to do the same on the other side just to shrink the motor down as much as possible, because it's got to go up through the hole here in the ceiling, which I'm not entirely sure how big it is. But we're gonna have to do some cramming in the cram hole to get it out of here. So that's gonna be a fun one when we get to that point. But I got to get this big muffler out of the way, because that's right where we've got to go up. So I've got to try to shift it forward above the generator, which is why I have all the generator exhaust off as well. So that's what I'm going to keep carrying on with. Oh man, so much ugly. Can't wait to get the new stuff in. And now for the moment I've all been waiting for. I get to get rid of all of the cables on the engines. So there's a few cables here. There's throttle cables, there's transmission shifting cables, and then there's two cables that control dampers that close the intakes on these engines. These engines have been known in the past to fail supercharger seals, which sucks oil into the engine. At least that's from what I understand, which will cause a runaway condition. So what they do is they have these emergency dampers where you pull a knob up at the top up there, and it closes intake flaps on the inlet of the engine, so it will kill the engine even in the event of a runaway. Obviously not needed with the new engines, none of it. So I'm reefing it all out because I can't stand the cables. So here we go. On board Tangaroa, the first thing was getting the exhaust pipes out. Now these were huge. I mean, those Detroits, they moved a lot of air. That's a 14-liter two-stroke. So much air moving through. They used two 8-inch exhaust pipes that went up through the stack in the center of the boat. And that's, I think, roughly around 8 feet to 10 feet worth of pipe, and it's all steel. There was no stainless in any of that. These things were rusty, they were gross. And at the top, they were actually separated. So funny enough, every time you'd start the engine on the boat, especially when they were cold and you got a lot of smoke, the entire engine room would fill with smoke because all that would get sucked back down the stack into the engine room. So everything was just a mess in there. It very much needed doing. So we had to get these out. And like I said, they're 10 feet long. There's no way to get them out of the top in one piece. Downstairs, I don't have 10 feet worth of room to go down. So what we ended up having to do was take those and then lower them down inch by inch or foot by foot. Then I'd have to cut them, remove that section, attach the come along or the ratchet straps again, lower it down another 2 or 3 feet, cut another chunk of pipe off. So it was a pretty time-consuming process. And I think that stuff was like 3/16 of an inch thick. It was not thin steel, and it was rusty, and it was full of nasty, oily soot in there. It was just gross. And it took a while, and it took a lot of effort. And then we had to get it out of the engine room. So we had to pack it through the hatch in the foredeck, and then we had to get it down onto the ground. And it was an interesting job, but it was pretty exciting to get it all out of there and get that off of our plate. All right, I'm up here trying to get these exhausts out here today, and there's these 2 flanges here that they're going through on the stack. I was just removing these bolts, and every single one of them not doing anything. I'm not sure what they're actually threaded into. I can't even tell what that is, if that's just disintegrated aluminum or if it's something else, but I gotta try to get these off of here.
It's like Santa Claus stuck in a boat.
See anything.
You can't see anything?
See anything. Any of this stuff is attached.
Do you have the spotlight in there?
Yeah. I don't see anything. I don't know how that's done.
Can we take this apart somehow?
Nope. Yeah, I'm confused now. Yeah, like look at this here.
What's that?
Don't know.
Put down these.
No,
Ew.
I'm not sticking my arm down there. Not a chance.
You see anything?
I mean, it looks like it might slip on, but then again, it also looks like it might be welded. So I really just don't know.
Go get a big long brush and start brushing in there, cleaning it.
No.
Okay.
No. No.
So we don't know how to take these off.
Look, it's like this one's separated.
Okay.
So maybe it is a slip joint, and I've just got to get the slip separated.
You gotta pry more, baby.
Well, I've already pried lots, and it hasn't come off yet.
Oh, this looks like it's wood or aluminum.
I don't know what it is. There's maybe some movement behind it. Yeah, I'm assuming I just gotta...
Pry.
The pipes separated on the inside, so the 2 main pipes are separated from this tube from the actual pipe that goes straight down, but I can't figure out how to get the generator pipes loose. So I'm bringing out my next favorite tool, and we're going to see if I can cut the generator exhausts free from the plate that these are mounted to, and then hopefully I can slide this plate off of here and actually get in here and access where I've got to work, because once I have that done, then I can just cut away the generator exhaust in here. But that's what I'm going to try here. hard work. That is aluminum. That is really badly corroded aluminum. Like some of the worst I've seen. Definitely had some moisture sitting in there. But guess I'm gonna have to cut all that out and redo it. You can see right down through into the engine room now. So I've got to get these big pipes out of here. So these are 8-inch diameter exhaust pipes from the original Detroit 12V71s. And they go all the way from the engine room, obviously right up to the top of the boat. And they're really long. So I've got to get them out. And of course, I don't have that much space on either end to get these out. So what I'm having to do is cut them here. And then I've got to take that chunk out, lower down the piece. Hopefully I'll be able to get the whole pipe out on the next drop. Otherwise, I'll have to cut it again and just take it out piece by piece. It's a pain in the butt, but it's the only way that I can figure to get them out. So here we go. Oh no! Okay, they're separated. Now I've got to get this one out and then drop this one down a little more. Whew. Fun stuff. All right, that's the next step. So now I get to do the same thing and see if I can't cut it here, and then I can remove that chunk. 'Cause there's still a fair bit up in there. I don't think I'm going to be able to, actually might be able to lean it out. So I'm going to clear out some of this crap here and see if I can kind of ease it down into the bilge here. And hopefully that'll do the trick. So here we go. And that's why I'm wearing a respirator. Hey, Janice? No, you'll be fine. It's just got to come down a little bit more, and then I'm going to ease this side down.
Okay.
Okay.
More?
No,
What is that?
that's one of the two exhausts.
Woohoo! Whoa. Wow. Wow. Do you feel strong?
I always feel strong.
Ah!
I got you.
Get off my boot. Do you want to practice with the small one first?
Sure.
It's always good to practice with the small one first.
Big one is shorter. Okay, got it.
time to get these suckers off.
Yep.
I don't want them overnight because they're very rusty and the rust will get all over my teeth dick. Deck. Okay, it's on my foot. Hold on, transitioning to rope.
And there we go. All the exhaust pipes are free and clear. They will not be going back in again. Still not 100% set on how I'm going to be doing the exhaust. I'm leaning toward an underwater exhaust when I go to rebuild everything. But we've kind of decided to reuse the mufflers here. Yes, they're big. They take up a huge amount of space in the engine room, but they work really well. And it's really expensive to replace with new mufflers. So I think we might just keep these and use them with the new engines. So whether we go out the stack again, which I doubt I will, or through the side or through the bottom, these should keep them nice and quiet anyway. And then you can see that's the new engine room ventilation. So that is a whole lot of fresh air. And we can use it because the ventilation has always been not so good in this engine room, so that should fix that completely. So we talked about it in earlier videos. We've got two hatches to get these engines out. One is in the galley. It is right in the floor. Fortunately, not underneath anything, at least not under anything major. And then there's one in the top of the boat. And they required some effort to get out. So starting with the one in the galley, it was underneath our flooring. So we had the main plywood floor, and then on top of that we had some 1/2 inch thick, or maybe even a little thinner than that, flooring ply just to even everything out. So what I ended up having to do was cut out the flooring, our new flooring. I had to cut out a big chunk of it. And then we had to peel up this layer of flooring ply, and then we had access down to the actual panel underneath. A few bolts removed underneath, and then I was able to lift that hatch right up. They actually designed it really easy. It just sits into cups and then on a flange around the outside. So once you get all the screws out of it, it was pretty easy to just lift up, carry out of the way. And now we had a big hole down into the engine room. I am trying to find the floor access panel. We know where the ceiling one is because it's accessible, but this access panel is completely covered over with our flooring. I've got to remove some things to get to it, and then I'm going to find the four corners because it's actually got a sheet of flooring ply over the top of the access panel that I'm going to have to cut away.
How are you doing how are you going to find the four corners?
So I use usually a hanger, but Janice brought up the great idea of using welding rod.
Because we have no wire hangers on board.
No, we tend to try to avoid having steel rod on board. This is a trick that I learned at Shaw Cable when I used to work there. And you just cut the welding rod or the hanger off, and it makes kind of a sharp edge. And then it's a really small hole, and you can drill up from the bottom, and it'll act like a drill bit. And it'll run through, and then it will poke out up top, and then I can find my four corners. That's better.
What do you think? I think we should actually leave this here and make the counter wider, and it will give me more of a workspace for my laptop. Let's think about this. Look at that. I really like that there, Blaine.
Yeah.
Is it on wheels?
It's on wheels.
Oh my god, look how dirty it is back there.
So it's pretty bad. Okay, it's unplugged. Ready? 1, 2, 3, roll.
Rolling, rolling, rolling. Let's keep our fridge a rolling. Here, drop your bottom.
Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
Okay.
So drop my bottom. But I'm going to fire up the hanger in the back corner here
In this corner.
to see if I can see where it is there.
I see it!
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it! Right there.
So 48 inches. No, we're good. Gonna be right at that edge. Now, the question is where's that one?
Do it again. Bring it in a couple inches this time when you do it.
Yeah, we'll do. Time to cut the floor. I've just made a little fence here out of some din rail that I had. So I'm only going to be able to get so much of this with the saw. Then I'll have to follow up with the recip saw. Or not the recip, the oscillating saw. So this is going to be fun. And when I say this is going to be fun, this is not going to be fun. Stop putting holes in my ship!
Stop blowing holes in my ship!
And now for the moment of truth. That's a hole. Styrofoam. Hate styrofoam. There she is. And that's the muffler there, the big white thing. So all that's going to have to come out. That's a big hole. So we talked about it in earlier videos. We've got two hatches to get these engines out. One is in the galley. It is right in the floor. Fortunately, not underneath anything, at least not under anything major. And then there's one in the top of the boat. And they required some effort to get out. So starting with the one in the galley, it was underneath our flooring. So we had the main plywood floor, and then on top of that we had some 1/2 inch thick, or maybe even a little thinner than that, flooring ply just to even everything out. So what I ended up having to do was cut out the flooring, our new flooring. I had to cut out a big chunk of it. And then we had to peel up this layer of flooring ply, and then we had access down to the actual panel underneath. A few bolts removed underneath, and then I was able to lift that hatch right up. They actually designed it really easy. It just sits into cups and then on a flange around the outside. So once you get all the screws out of it, it was pretty easy to just lift up, carry out of the way. And now we had a big hole down into the engine room.
Out.
Okay, see the edge of the panel. We still have to remove this one too, but that seam there, that's where the panel unbolts. So you can see you got a bolt here. There's probably gonna be a bolt back in here somewhere. Another one up here, another one right there.
Are you gonna drill holes again up so we can cut the paint perfectly?
Yeah, exactly. That's the plan. This is going to be a little bit more challenging because it looks like they've built in an overlap on this one as well, which is good. But that means I've got nowhere to really drill up through without actually drilling a hole through aluminum, which I prefer to not do.
You need to be measuring.
I think that's basically what, I'll have to do. So these wonderful people that did this, the hatch up here to get into the engine room. I thought it was just bolted around the peripheral like these guys. Find it here. Yeah. Then I noticed there's this flange here, and there's a bolt like every 3 inches all the way around the outer diameter of this hatch. And that has all been painted over, filled over, and is completely inaccessible on the top of the boat. So I'm not sure what they were thinking when they did that, but obviously they weren't, because that is
They were thinking that
super
engines wouldn't have to be
stupid.
replaced.
Well, if they were thinking engines didn't have to be replaced, why did they make the hatch removable?
So like Blaine said, they actually filled PUD over top of all the screw holes to take out this panel. So I'm up here, I put up my tent. See, good thing I brought my tent with me. So I have a big tent for the roof to catch the dust. And look at, I gotta grind and get all those screw holes. And there's about every 2 inches. Okay, so I've worked my way all the way around. You can see what I've done here. Now I have a problem, is this. This is like an epoxy that's over top of the flathead screws. So I've got to figure out how to get that epoxy out. So I'm gonna try a heat gun, because just popping it out doesn't work, but a heat gun's pretty good. So let's see if it works.
To help? I said, I'm helping.
Becky, you're not helping. You're like cheerleading. That worked. That's not a very big bolt at all.
Nope, there's just a whole lot of them.
So many. So many.
So this this panel is actually flexed into place as I'm taking these bolts out, because we've already done all the screws at the top. As I'm taking these bolts out, the whole thing is going.
So the screws are flexing it into place.
Yes.
So I'm gonna have to sit on it to get it back down.
We'll have to work around an edge and do it that way. But these aren't even nutted on the back side. They're just threaded through the one side.
I'm glad I'm videoing so we know how to put it back together again. Are you ready? What are you gonna do? Oh, that's a veggie, Blaine.
Yep.
Ah!
That sounds promising.
Oh. Okay, these things keep falling out.
Another wedgie. That's where that other screw is.
I thought you got it out.
No, I drilled it, but it's not out. It'll come out once we lift up the rest of this. I think it's separated all except for that one spot. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's ready. That's ready.
Do that again. Okay.
So lastly was the gantry. I had been thinking about this for quite a while. I had an idea in mind on how I wanted to do it. And I had some stuff for it at my shop because I use a gantry for pulling engines out of cars and things like that. So I did have a pretty good idea of how I wanted to do this. And the way that all worked out is I've got I-beams. So my gantry at the shop is a big I-beam and it's got a car that runs across it. So it's got like little wheels and it clamps onto that I-beam. And then you use a chain hoist. So basically I just had to repeat that for the other side as well. So what we ended up doing is we
put the beam in place, I had to weld in some posts, and then I tied those posts into the ceiling joists as well, so they didn't flop around or move. And then I had to build a second I-beam in the other side of the engine room, or the back of the engines. Another I-beam, another couple of posts, and I'm building all of this on the main stringers for the engine, so there's lots of support there to hold the engine weight. And then I got a bigger car, and I got a bigger chain hoist from the back. And then once I had all that in place, we were able to actually drop chains down, hook onto the front and the rear of the engine, and lift it right off the bed. And then very carefully, with nobody underneath it, was able to pull that engine across. It was sketchy as all, but we were able to get it done. Nobody was hurt in the process. We just brought it across, and then we set it back down onto the rails on the other side of the engine room.
So first things first, building in gantries for shifting the engines over. I have to get this out of the way because that's right where my gantry is going to have to go. Fortunately, I have these guys. I had them at the shop. I use them for building exhausts on cars when they're up on the hoist. But they come in really handy as floor supports while I can take this out and put something else in. So, yep, basically just pop them in, wind them up tight, and then you can just slide these guys right out of here. So that's what I'm going to start with today. Now those poles may or may not be going back in again. I will have something here. It might just not be those. Might be able to use them. They're still in pretty good shape, so I can just cut them down because they're going to actually be sitting on top of the stringer rather than bolted to the side of it like they were, which will also widen out the walking path here. And I can do that with the new engines because there's less overhang out this way. So should make everything a little bit more comfortable in the engine room, I'd say. So now that I've got that out, I can start removing this guy, and then once that's out, I can put the new steel gantry in. It'll just be a temporary one just to get the engine shifted across, and then I'll get a piece of aluminum to replace it with when I'm done. I'll probably go wider than this one. I'll probably go right out to the deck edge here, so just a little bit extra support anyway. But anyway, I'm going to get going on that. So I figured while I was in here and working in this area, I'd remove some of the old crappy stabilizer wiring. So you can see these multicolored bundles here. They were, I think they were added later as a repair, but you can see where they've been spliced onto the gray wires here, and then spliced again on the other end, which is not awesome. But sounds like Janice is knocking for me, so I better go see what she needs.
If you're wondering what's going in after we pull the Detroits, check out the video where we rebuilt 2 Cummins truck engines to power our 78-foot boat. It's a big step in this repower. Don't miss it.